The number 3 is defined as a quantity 1 greater than 2, a natural number that comes before 4 and after 2. It apparently originates from the Hindu Arabic numerical system roughly between 200 BCE and 500 BCE, and then was slowly adopted by the Europeans through trade and mathematics. It is a prime number, meaning that it cannot be divided exactly by any other whole number other than itself. Some say the number 3 carries the superstition of being incredibly unlucky, as the saying goes, bad luck always comes in threes. The number 3 has walked with humanity through the ages and in some cases has been crucial to the history of humanity, but its impact would be even greater if Valve learned to fucking use it! Left 4 Dead 2, Team Fortress 2, Portal 2, Dota 2, Half-Life 2, Half-Life 2 Episode 2, even recently CSGO 2. Do you notice something? Apparently someone at Valve can't count past 2, and instead of confronting their lack of knowledge, they will just refuse to continue any game series. No matter how much humanity would rejoice at a third installment of any of these games, except maybe Dota 2, no matter how it would positively change the game industry, no matter how much money it would generate, not even if it cured cancer or those who simply had a bad spawn, weak genetics and are a plague on society but won't stop bitching about it, and for some reason are mostly from America, that being people with lactose intolerance, and they still won't add another installment to any of these games. These culturally defining games are just left as legends, never to be continued. If you think about it, almost every one of these games has been the base for many other games. Team Fortress 2 later inspired hero shooters to come to fruition and be more overused than a 7-Eleven glory hole. The mechanics of Portal has inspired and been implemented in many games. Left 4 Dead, yeah, no one has successfully copied the magic of that game yet. Not even the people that helped make it and tried returning with Back 4 Blood, which wasn't the most well-received game, and for marketing itself as the next Left 4 Dead, even including previous devs of Left 4 Dead, which was also used in the marketing, which was like 7 people who worked on the demo of Left 4 Dead, and out of 121 people that worked on the whole game. At this point, if you want a sequel of that game, you are better off doing what every Left 4 Dead player does, and just modding the base game where it looks nothing like the original, with anime girls, rip-offs from other games, and unique infected. But there's one game made by Valve that people have been anticipating a continuation to for almost 2 decades now. A game which left people on a cliffhanger for also almost 2 decades now. Well, until it was somewhat retconned in a later game. A game which people at this point would sacrifice their firstborn just for it to finally be announced. A game which has had people's hopes raised once a year for about 20 years with every Valve announcement or update. And every little detail referring to it means that it is definitely coming out. This is going to be the year it's released. This is definitely the year. I'm not delusional. I mean, this year they even had a guy come out of YouTube retirement just to talk about it. So this must be the year. Any day now it is going to be announced. But that game is Half-Life, and people have been waiting for Half-Life 3. And to be honest, with everything I've seen, this year might be the year it's announced. And if it does get announced, it would probably rival GTA 6 in terms of hype. Well, probably not, the nursing home does have nap times and stuff. But we'll talk about how this year is different than all the other years later. But Half-Life at this point needs no introduction. But for those of you that popped out the womb recently, didn't have to cope with the terrible optimization of the Xbox 360 release of Half-Life, and didn't experience the artistic genius of the Linkin Park Half-Life animation, it starts with one thing. So probably anyone born after 2004 probably doesn't know how much of a monolith in human history this game is. But for your better understanding, think of Fallout New Vegas. It's a completely different game that released in 2010, but still to this day you will have people praising it, making video essay about how good it was and any minute detail present in the game. And it is still talked about quite regularly despite the game being released 15 years ago. And you'd think at that point all the talking points would have already been explored, but people still find something to praise about the game to this day. Think about that but multiplied tenfold, and that is the Half-Life community, where most videos are just essentially giving this game the sloppiest rim job possible, and that rim job is well deserved. But why? Well, the first Half-Life very much changed the game industry and set the precedent for games going forward, and before the development even started, Gabe Newell, the founder of Valve, was a Harvard dropout that worked at Microsoft for multiple years, and left that job to pull together all the people he could, some even being modders for things like Quake at the time, to make the company we all know today as Valve, which very much dominates the gaming industry, especially if you have a PC and need to download games. And for this being their first game, they did not claim the parmesan behind their foreskin because the gaming industry would not forget the taste of Half-Life for the years to come. Just to provide a short list of what the first game revolutionized: AI behavior, level design, environmental storytelling, general storytelling, level transitioning with barely any loading screens, how the environment reacts to the player, like how when you shoot a wall and you expect a bullet hole to be somewhat present, Half-Life did that better than most games at the time. And that was me just naming a few. The first Half-Life was very popular when it released in 1998, winning over 50 Game of the Year awards. With this success, Valve went on to make more games, including the first Team Fortress, Ricochet, Day of Defeat, eventually Counter-Strike, a build on an already existing mod for Half-Life, of which they would then make Counter-Strike Condition Zero and Counter-Strike Source, and then later recreating Half-Life 1 within that new Source engine. We also saw the beta for a project that wasn't even a game. It was a platform that would later dominate the game market, that being Steam, where you would be able to access all these games, and a game that most of these aforementioned games would pale in comparison to. Except maybe Counter-Strike Source, depending on who you ask. But that game was Half-Life 2, released in 2004, where Valve would raise the bar for games once again. It revolutionized once again, and it built even further on the things I listed previously. It pushed graphics, physics, world building, sound design. It revolutionized the FPS genre. And the story, oh god, the story, even in 2025, it is still rivaling a lot of the newer AAA games. Definitely better than Black Ops 7 to say the least. We were way too hard on Black Ops 3's campaign.
Train go boom.
The pure scale of the lore from the Combine to how headcrab variants come to be. It was a video essay channel's wet dream. There's even a video on just the Half-Life trains. All the people in the Half-Life community who most think are neurodivergent must have loved that. The game was so good it obviously has a loyal following to this day. Like, very loyal, to the point where for some reason they basically called a streamer a pussy in Half-Life lore terms.
You are genuinely stupid if you think the whole world will end because you acting like it's the Combine 7-hour invasion of Earth, which was worse. You act like you're the leftist tough guy. You would not last a single second in City 17, and nobody is crazy except the people you hired to ban for you.
Welcome to City 17. You have chosen or been
You act like this is the Combine 7-hour invasion of Earth? You would not last a single second in City 17?
I thought so much of City 17 that I elected to establish my administration here. I've been proud to call City 17
Do you
my
think
home.
Do you think Half-Life 2 is real life?
But my favourite part of Half-Life 2 is where Gaben perfectly describes the average Half-Life player.
A single player game is sort of like a feature film where your lead actor is kind of and autistic, but you can sort of think of it as...
Later Steam had fully launched and we were being drip-fed the later 2 episodes over the course of 3 years.
Leave me alone!
And then it would just stop, no more episodes, and we were left on a cliffhanger.
I wonder what's gonna happen in the next one.
Eli, there's not a next one. They didn't make a next one. Does that make you sad?
Around the release of episode 2, they would also release Portal and Team Fortress 2. And before that we had Gmod, which was not made by Valve but used the game engine and assets from Half-Life. And they were spared from copyright infringement hell from Gaben himself, and was even put on the Steam platform, where I'm pretty sure on its own it went on to change internet culture as a whole, specifically what we call shitposts today. Then a year later, Left 4 Dead, and something I didn't know. A year after that, Left 4 Dead 2. I thought with the jump in graphics and whatnot, Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 were years apart. But the more you know, I guess. Then came along Portal 2 and Counter-Strike Global Offensive, or CSGO. and most of these games released around the mid-2000s to early 2010s. Valve was basically bukakiing all of us with peak and games that would make up our childhood, and for some reason they would sort of slow down going past this point. Valve wasn't just a game company now. They were a game company, a platform that would send an Apache helicopter if anyone dare access your account without consent, and then they were a software developer and later a hardware developer. Valve was so much bigger now, but its game output did slow down. We were no longer being treated to multiple game releases per year, but now a game every few years, which yeah, you shouldn't be so greedy, you fat fuck. Half-Life Episode 3 was in development for a time, even teased by Gaben himself occasionally.
After Orange Box, we have to get Episode 3 out. We know how the trilogy ends, and there are a bunch of loose ends and narrative arcs that need to come to a conclusion in Episode 3.
Well, he would speak about it until years later he would eventually stop.
Half-Life is headed.
I got nothing to say about Half-Life.
Well, it's not dead anyway.
I have nothing to say about Half-Life.
These things, they take time.
But it got pushed back again and again. Different people worked on it each time, new assets were created, and the hopium and speculations increased each year. But it never came. As Gaben said himself in a documentary for the Half-Life anniversary, it would have been easy to push out Episode 3, but he didn't feel like it would have been right. Maybe because the game at the time wouldn't have pushed that bar that had been pushed by the other entries in the series.
Like, it wouldn't have been that hard. You know, the failure was, my personal failure was being stumped. Like, I couldn't figure out why doing Episode 3 was pushing anything forward. Decision and those sets of designs. I think that Half-Life represents a tool we have and promises made to customers to capitalize on innovation and opportunities to build game experiences that haven't been involved previously.
And over the years, people waited for anything, a minuscule crumb of news on Half-Life, and each time they either starved or were misled. Gamescom 2016 was a specific event because there was a poster showing Half-Life 3 seemingly going to be announced for the event, and for a short period of time, some people lost their shit thinking it was going to be announced. But when translated, it read the message Half-Life, 3 editors who played it back then. There was constantly fake announcements or leaks created by trolls. Even Valve themselves started to poke the bear, with employees that worked at Valve wearing Half-Life 3 shirts. A former lead writer would post a summary of the unreleased plot of Episode 3 in 2017, titled Episode 3, which crashed the website with how many people were trying to see the summary of what would be Episode 3, and many awed at what they saw in said summary. They found the Borealis and boarded it. Alyx kills Mossman to fulfill her father's dying wish. Alyx joins the G-Man, leaving Gordon on a Borealis with what is essentially a nuke on board. And that is basically it. But then in 2020, with the release of Half-Life Alyx, Episode 3 wouldn't make much sense, since the ending of Alyx basically retconned the ending of Half-Life 2 Episode 2, and spoiler alert, Eli now doesn't die. So why would Alyx have to shoot Mossman to fulfill her father's dying wish, which was to supposedly destroy the Borealis so the Combine don't get their hands on it, and Mossman wanted to activate it, hence why Alyx shot her. But it also doesn't help that the same writer came out in 2023 and said himself all of this was just his fanfiction and not the actual story, and he was very sorry. I think if you googled an abuse victim of a corporate entity, a Half-Life fan would appear. But anyway, speaking of Half-Life Alyx, announced in 2019, and Half-Life fans creamed in their pants just at the announcement.
This looks incredible!
But this wasn't Half-Life 3, it was a prequel to Half-Life 2 centered around Alyx. Well, no shit, it's called Half-Life Alyx. And the only time you get to play Gordon is for 5 seconds at the end of the game. An ending that once again did not relieve any suffering from the fans. It was essentially an ibuprofen for 4th degree burns. because it replaced one cliffhanger with another. Some people were disappointed it wasn't Half-Life 3 after waiting all these years, and also because it was a VR game, and this was around the time VR games were being pushed out everywhere, and some people were not going to buy a VR headset just to play this game. But to be honest, Half-Life Alyx, despite not being Half-Life 3, once again did push the bar Gaben always wanted to push. It is renowned as one of the best VR games with the graphics, things you can do in the game, and level of detail like fizzy bubbles. This was yet another Half-Life that pushed the bar. Also, now there's a mod where you can play the full game without a VR headset, but it does take away a lot of the magic of the original, to be honest. But it still wasn't Half-Life 3. At this point, the so-called hopium was rising. A new title after more than a decade, they must be releasing Half-Life 3 any day now. Any month now. Any year now. And still for the foreseeable future, there was no Half-Life 3 announcement, leading to the rise of the nothing ever happens format, people that believe Half-Life 3 won't get announced, which was a direct counter to the hopium injectors who were still coping, still hoping something would happen, something would be announced. But all they got in that time was Deadlock. Not a bad game, I'm enjoying it. But why is 2025 different than any other year? Well, basically there's been more edging compared to the previous years. First you had the voice actor of G-Man come out at the end of 2024 with a cryptic video suggesting something was coming, unexpected surprises if you will.
Another year already. Good to see and hear from so many of you. May the next quarter century deliver as many unexpected surprises as did the millenniums first. And again, time is fluid, like music. See you in the new year.
I mean, he could have just been wishing us a happy new year. He did post this on December 31st, but a bit later a bunch of reputable sources were suggesting something big was coming. And they were right, Valve would announce their new hardware. Unlike the first time they launched their VR headset with Half-Life Alyx, people speculated they would launch all these new devices with a game. And this time not only did they launch a new VR headset, they also announced the Steam Machine, or as many are calling it, the Gaben Cube. And I just have to say it, for all of you out there, this isn't a console. Yeah, it's the size of one, kind of looks like one, but it's its own computer and it runs on Valve's own distribution of Linux. And depending on said distribution, you might need to learn a few Linux commands. But not only is this computer probably going to be adopted by most offices of corporate entities due to its small size, power, and depending on the price tag, but once again, if they're announcing a device, you'd think it would come with a game, as some of their previous devices had. And obviously people thought it's going to launch with Half-Life 3. But now the question was, what is the day this is going to be announced? Recently the date theorized has been pushed further and further back. First it was November 18th, then 19th, and so on. So basically, nobody knows when it's going to be announced. But supposed insiders and reputable sources say Valve is still pushing for a 2025 announcement, especially since they've been working on a project called Half-Life X for some time now, so something is coming. I swear to God, if it's Ricochet 2 or Deadlock finally being fully released, which I personally would be happy with, but with the hype around it, if it's not Half-Life, there are going to be a few riots or overdoses from the Hopers. But 2025 is quite possibly the closest we've come to Half-Life 3, so when is it going to be announced? Well, as said before, the popular belief is the end of 2025. But you know what else is at the end of each year? The Game Awards. Which is pretty self-explanatory. Games get awards for specific categories, which this year I'm pretty sure Expedition 33 is going to win every category. You may as well just call it the Expedition 33 Awards. But they also announced new games, and Half-Life 3 might be one of those titles. And Valve is said to be present at this year's Game Awards. I even found a simulation of what could happen if they do announce it.
And now, Gabe Newell.
Half-Life 2, Episode 3.
On top of that, the host of the Game Awards, who is on somewhat friendly terms with Gaben and was present for the announcement of Half-Life Alyx, he recently tweeted his Steam page where you could see something present in his wishlist. which was just a random indie game. But look at when he added it to his wish list. He added it after he was being questioned about what was in it, so something else was in that wish list before he changed it. On top of this, on Steam, Valve's up-and-coming games releases have 2 items listed, but only the Love of My Life Deadlock is shown and another is hidden. And people noticed changes to Steam itself, which was very similar to when Half-Life Alyx was launched. But as of right now, we have nothing else to go off, and the hopium is at max capacity. But if Valve does a funny haha and actually announces something else, I personally think they might have to open a hotline for the amount of distraught and traumatized people there's going to be. But in my opinion, it might come out at the Game Awards and is coming very soon. And I think it will push that bar Gaben always wants to push. If it doesn't get announced, well, you've waited almost 20 years, what else do you have to lose? But yeah, that's all I had to talk about today. Fuck you, I love you, say it back, and bye-bye.